want you to start thinking in year-long periods because you need to sort of anticipate what classes will or won't be taught and when they will be taught so that you can optimize your selection of technical electives. And I'm not sure if you've ever looked at the curriculum the way that I've drawn it here in terms of organizing it relative to decades, but that's actually somewhat how we've tried to start initially back in the beginning. I was younger then. 100 years ago, when we laid out these courses, we had particular decades associated with particular subject areas. And I've tried to indicate that in this particular part of the slide. And in particular, if you remember that you took 175, 275, oh, those are in the 70s. Well, the 60s and 70s, those decades of numbers, when you get to the 400s, 500s, those will be generally computer type classes, but it's not always set in stone. So we ran out of numbers, essentially. That's why you see these A's, B's, C's. We don't have 4-digit courses, and so if you see a 351C, you know that it's been evolving as a class. That said, we have the 20s through the 40s, our signals and systems classes, and signals and systems can be thought of as communication, signal processing, and control. We have the 50s, which are the electronics generally classes, 351C, 352. The 60s and 70s I've already talked about, and the 80s are electromagnetics and optics classes. That's how we've tried to organize the subsequent classes you'll see at the 400 and 500 level. And what I want to do now is really just start trying to forecast what's going to happen in January, in the spring semester. And I think some of you can register now for the spring semester, and that's why we've tried to do that now so that you can start registering for classes. But let's, for whatever reason, let's talk about the computer classes first, the 60s and 70s, and you can see that I'm already violating my 60s and 70s, but 330B could be classified as a computer class or a signals and systems class, so it's okay, and I hope it's okay that we number them whatever we number them, but this, if you're trying to identify something, if you slide back and you say, oh, I really liked this class and it was a computer class, then you might say, oh, maybe I want to take some more technical electives in that area. The other caveat to that, or the counterpoint, is, oh, I didn't really like that class. Well, give it a chance. Maybe something that's in that same area you might really like. So don't necessarily throw something out if you don't think that it's appropriate. But in the computer area, we now have actually some new classes that maybe you haven't seen before, and I'm obviously not being able to spell today in my haste to make this information available. So let me just go ahead and say computer architecture is ARCH abbreviated. Then I don't have to try to keep misspelling it. That's 462, 562, and the reason I'm listing these as dual numbered is if you want to be in the AMP program as an undergraduate, you will be asked or required to take the 500 level course. And I'm not really talking about non-400 level classes here, but if you do go into the AMP, you are not restricted to taking only dual numbered. You can go and take a pure 500 level class as an AMP student and count that towards both degrees, your BS and MS. So don't get the impression that just because it's dual numbered, that's the class that you have to take for a technical elective. That's not true if you're in the AMP. And even if you're not in the AMP, you can petition to take 500 level classes or the 500 level version of a class if you so desire. And you can, I think you have to have a 3.0 to do that, but if you do elect that, it will ask you, do you want to use this towards your undergraduate degree, or do you not want to? Do you want to put it in the graduate school bucket? So if you were thinking maybe of transferring after your undergrad and you have plenty of units accumulated, you could maybe take some units here that might actually transfer to another institution. Not that I'm telling you to leave, but I'm just trying to give you some options. Computer architecture, that's obviously a continuation of 369A. That's the second semester, and that's 462. 466 is Artificial Intelligence 2. Artificial Intelligence 1 is 479, 579, which I'm trying to do these numerically as how they're listed, but a class being sooner in number than another doesn't necessarily mean that it's lower level or higher level. And in this case, AI2 can be taken at the same time as AI1. AI1 is not a prerequisite for AI2, even though I'm using those just for you to sort of categorize or catalog that set of courses. But knowledge system engineering and principles of artificial intelligence, those are two related courses in terms of subject matter. The other one is a somewhat new class, and that's Fundamentals of Information and Network Security. So if you're interested in security or secure networks, that's 471. And again, that's in the computer engineering area. In the 50s, in the electronics/biomedical coursework, 304A hasn't been taught for a while, but that's design of electronic circuits. Now you're putting pieces together to make a bigger electronic system. You're now having multi-stage amplifiers. So you're now putting the pieces together that you've created in 351C to make something even bigger. Now maybe you have a preamplifier stage, a mid-range, and then an output stage, for example, and you're building all of that together in ECE 304A, and that is a technical elective now. That used to be a required course in one of the curriculums in the electrical engineering option. Question? So I'm sorry, I shouldn't maybe have said that. The question was, it hasn't been taught for a while. That's just to let you know that it's new and we're hoping to keep teaching it. It's okay. So it's not on the schedule of classes right now if you've memorized the schedule of classes, but it's on our request to get in. There's now, I think, 31 pages of requests university-wide. It's on page 3 to get put in the system. So after I tell you, and it will be there, so our plan for ECE is for 304A to be available to you in the spring of 2018 to take. And that question reminded me, 351C is obviously a prerequisite for 304A. So you can't take 304A and expect to be successful without being successful in 351C and completing 351C. Did that answer your question? 352 can be taken as a technical elective if you're in the computer engineering option, and that class traditionally, I believe, was taught in the fall. We're actually transitioning that to now being taught only in the spring. This particular academic year, it's being offered both semesters. You'll see 352 now in the fall semester, and you're going to see it again in the spring of 2018, but you will not see it, if we do our homework right, you won't see it in fall of 2018. So if you want to take that class, the spring, and if you're graduating in fall of 18, spring is the time to take it. Obviously, if you're EE, you need to be planning that if you're an EE option. CE can be using it as a technical elective. 417, 517, if you like getting into the lab and playing with sensors and measurements, taking data and doing data analysis, here's that applied in a biomedical setting. So if you're even thinking about wearables or something in that vein, this might be a class. And this class is pretty challenging to get into in terms of demand. Maybe not so much technically, but this you're competing with biomedical engineers to get into this. So if you want it, you may want to try to get into it early, is traditionally what has happened. It's difficult to get as a class. The enrollment is limited because there is a lab component to that class. And you might see some of those students walking up and down the hall instrumented with sensors that they're now trying to activate and measure on themselves. If you see somebody trailing a cord down the hall, maybe that's why next semester. Or maybe you want to just sit in the hall and see if you can find them or identify them. No, I think you probably have other things to do. But moving into the 80s. Into the 80s, I just learned today that 488, 588, even though it was on the schedule, I think it's now been removed. That was a follow-on to 486, 586. There were no students enrolled in it before we canceled it, but it's unavailable. But in the 80s, following like a 381, you might be interested in 484, which is the antenna theory and design class. One that's not necessarily like, well, it does depend on 381, is the photovoltaic. So if you're interested in alternative energy or an energy class, this is one of our toes into that pool of courses, is our photovoltaic solar, and you learn how to collect energy from the sun as efficiently as possible using silicon-based technology. That's 414A and 514A. Moving into the 20s, 30s, and 40s, the spring semester is the digital semester for whatever reason. You have digital signal processing, that's 429. You have digital communications, and that's a direct follow-on from 340A, so you definitely have to have taken 340A in order to be wanting to take 435A, and then digital control is 442. Those three classes in the signals and systems area will be taught in the spring semester. Now, that should be enough information for you to decide what you want to take for your technical electives, but I find that students really like to see it this way. Now they can plan their day. And I'm going to make this available. I'll post this information on my website, which is the ece.arizona.edu/tilde and my last name, T Harp, Tharp. If you have trouble with that, some people do. I sympathize because I have trouble pronouncing others' names, so I'm not offended if you mispronounce mine. But mine's Tharp. The world according to, now that's way up beyond you. Anyway, if you're wanting to plan your, and it looks like I've dropped some vowels, so I forgot to add 304A, but that's 304A, and if it's 304 on, so at 9 o'clock, if you wanted to take, and you can see then that biomedical class, if you were interested in it, it does consume a fair amount of your mornings on Tuesday, Thursday. It has a lab component and a lecture component, and it's pretty big in terms of hours of time during the week. And we're trying to distribute the courses. You can see that I haven't been successful at filling in this blank. Stay tuned, maybe that will happen, but I'm trying to make sure that you have a fair amount of options and that all of our classes are not taught from 11 to 12:15 on Tuesday and Thursday, although there are a large fraction. So what you'll have to do is, in addition to looking at that previous discussion, look at this and make sure that you don't have two that you want that are directly conflicting with time. Obviously, you can't be in, if you can be in two places at once, please come see me. I want to learn your techniques, okay? But this will be available to you, and you can sort of plan your day relative to maybe a work schedule, sleep schedule. Sleep is very important, and your academic schedule. That's the fall. No, we're in the fall. That's the spring semester, and I hope that's labeled properly. That's spring of 18. Wow, it's already fall of 17, isn't it? So next semester is there. And I hope this is fairly, and I've listed not only dual numbered classes in this grid, but also the exclusive 500 levels. So if you're interested, for example, if you're interested in big data, then you might want to investigate 523. And I hope that you know how to search the catalog online. You can go to the university website and go to the catalog and look up at least the course description, and you can probably find the instructor that had taught that in the past and ask them for more information if you want to dig a little bit deeper before making your decision. But I've tried to include not just dual numbered classes, but also exclusively 500. But you want to make sure you pay close attention to the prerequisite structure. 523 will be a challenge if you haven't had a lot of probability and statistics, probably statistics. Fall, and now this is our best guess. Obviously, this is a year into the future, and I can't predict the future. I can't even tell you the future very clearly, but this is what we are planning. In the computer area, if you're in the electrical engineering option, you have a couple of more in this area than the computer option students. But you can take computer architecture. If you're an EE, you can also take 373 if you're an EE option. The reason for the dashed line is I don't know what's going to happen with respect to that set of classes, and it's typically taught by one person. And one person won't be teaching both of them, I don't think. So it may be the web development and Internet of Things class in the 413, 513, or it might be an embedded system design and optimization. So now you're really getting down into the details of a computer and how do you now optimize its operation so that you can pull as much computing power and efficiency as possible from that operating device. That's the 576B, and that's, notice, an exclusive 500 level class. But the other one, the 413, 513, which is just for the first time being offered this fall of 2017, yeah, I don't know if we're going to alternate falls, but this is the first semester that that's been taught. And I don't know if we'll teach it again yet in fall of 2018. If you liked 274A, then 474A is the second semester of that, computer-aided logic design. And so in 274A, are you playing with FPGAs? That's sort of your first step into that. You get more into that, I believe, in 369A, but now you go down the path of the digital logic in 474A. And that recently has been taught by Tosi. Then if you're interested in computer networks, how do you connect all of these computers into a network? That's 478, 578. In the 50s, in air quotes, we have this list of courses. 450, 550, again, a prerequisite for that is 351C. That's analog integrated circuits. Then in the 434, if you're, and this one I'm not sure, but I'm hoping it's available. But again, I can't predict into the future. But if you're interested in how do semiconductor devices, what are their electrical and optical properties? So that's sort of a follow-on to like a 352 class. This would be 434, and that's both electrical and optical properties of material. If you want to know how they create in a manufacturing manner, or what's the process involved in making these semiconductors, that's 446, 546. And I think that's taught by someone outside of electrical and computer engineering. That's maybe taught by a chemical engineering faculty. Some of these courses are cross-listed, meaning they not only have ECE as a prefix, but they might also have chemical engineering or material science. So you might see a wide breadth of students in such a class. But that one is one, if you want to know how do they make these physically, that would be what you might want to pursue, and that's the 46. 454, 554 is electronic packaging. How do you deal with the electrical noise issues or thermal issues? What is involved with putting all of these things into a package, and how small of a package can we put them into, and what kinds of issues do we have to worry about? And you'll probably get into some 381 type ideas. What are the fields, and what are the describing this more on a distributed sense versus a lumped parameter sense as far as the electrical characteristics of that system. In the 80s, in the EMO decade, if you're a computer engineering option, you have the option to take as a technical elective the introductory course, which is 381A. Another class that sort of connects you with the optics space is the 459, and that's designed for electrical engineers, and maybe you should just say electrical/computer engineers. But how does someone in our field, in ECE, jump into the optics arena? And now you might start seeing geometrical optics or dispersion or different characteristics that we don't necessarily always talk about in ECE. But if you were talking to somebody in optics, this might be a good class to bridge into that discipline, and that's 459. I already have mentioned 486 as a prerequisite for 488, but if you're interested in designing circuits in the microwave frequency range and with passive strategy. So passive, you could sort of think of these lumped parameters that you used in 220 and 320 with resistors and capacitors. And then when you have active circuits, that's the 488, 588. So if you want to take 488, 588, which probably will be taught in the subsequent spring of 19, you'll want to take this class in the fall of 18. I'm not sure where you're at in your progression through the discipline, but you could take even 486 as an undergrad, taking the 586 if you're in the AMP, and taking the 588 as a graduate student, for example. Then we have the signals and systems, and in the fall it's not as heavily populated with courses. We have optical communications. Now you have to worry about fiber. How do we communicate with fiber, optical fiber, instead of wires or airwaves? That's 430, 530. And then automatic control, that's the analog version of 442. And I should say that 442, the digital course, which is taught next semester, does not require as a prerequisite this course 541 or 441A. It used to, but we've tried to teach it so that you don't. But if you've had one, it makes the second one that you have easier, I think, I would hope, in understanding the concepts. So if you're planning, depending on your sequence through, you could take 442 and then 441A in the fall. Or you could wait and say, let me take 441A because I'm going to be here for the next spring and take 442 then. I hope so. That's what I'm planning these for fall of 18. And here's again, this could dramatically change, but this is how it's laid out during the week and in what time slots. And you can see actually that there's usually not a lot of ECE courses taught here, because that's actually when we try to have our faculty meetings. This is actually an optical sciences class taught by an ECE professor, so we maybe don't, it's cross-listed. That's why it's maybe taught then. The other, hopefully you don't see too many 400 level classes taught in this window from 3:30 to 6:30. That's when you're in your capstone class. That's why you don't see technical electives in ECE in that time frame on Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. You will see some pure graduate school classes in those time slots or time windows. That's what I had for technical electives. Now let me, unless there are questions, now let me jump into the next half, second half, which may not be the time half. It may not take that long to talk about the Accelerated Master's program. But this is a program designed to enhance your ability to complete your BS and MS, Master of Science, in a shorter length of time. And the way that it does that is that it allows you to actually double count. So the Accelerated Master's program actually allows you to double count up to 4 classes, 4 3-unit classes, 12 units, both at the BS, towards your BS degree and towards your MS degree. You are constrained to take the 500 level classes for those 4 classes you're wanting to double count. But those 500 level classes don't have to be dual numbered. They can be pure 500 level courses that you could take as an undergrad. Is that clear? And how do you qualify? Here are some of the admission requirements. You're a junior or senior, so it's up to 4 classes. You don't have to do all 4. But if you do take 4, our MS requires a total of 10. So that now says, oh, I need to complete 6 classes in a calendar year. And to you, that probably sounds like a piece of cake after doing 5 or 6 a semester, but the graduate level classes traditionally are a little bit more challenging maybe than the undergraduate level classes. But still, it's doable now to take 3. I'm not teaching this semester, so I'm losing my voice after 30 minutes of talking. Sorry. But you now have 3 classes in the fall and the spring to finish up a master's degree in 1 year. One positive, well, there's a lot of positives to this. One is we waive the GRE. You don't have to take the GRE exam. Graduate record exam, there's usually a exam you have to take in order to get into graduate school. That's waived if you apply and are admitted to the AMP program as an undergrad. You can apply. It tells you here, really when you're in a junior status, you can apply. If you have 75 units, you can go ahead and apply. You can't start taking classes until you have senior status. I'm not sure that that's listed here, but in order to start taking the 500 level classes, you have to be at the senior level, which means that you have at least 90 units on your transcript as far as what you've completed as a student. And a lot of you maybe are already seniors and you're taking our sophomore courses. That happens. But maybe not. But anyway, you have to be 90 units in order to be taking that. What are some other points that I'm forgetting? If you are interested, you really do need to sit down with our ECE graduate academic advisor and sort of talk about what you want to do. And that's Miss Tammy Whalen. And you should email her to make an appointment. And you can do that by simply emailing. I'm not teaching, so I'm spelling challenged apparently this fall also. So grad advisor at, and is it, okay, it's ece.arizona.edu. Again, I'll make this material available to you through my website, but are there questions about the AMP? We've had about 60, more than 60 students since it was initiated back 4 years ago apply to this program, and we've had several complete it within the 5-year time frame. But it is a challenge to be taking 2 graduate level classes in your final 2 semesters of your coursework, especially during the capstone. Question?
So there's a strict 12 credit limit on how much you can take as an AP, but I transferred in, so I'm in a weird situation where I'm going to graduate in December, so I won't have to see the capstone anymore. I won't have a full schedule. Is there any way to take additional course beyond that and not apply it towards the bachelor's, only put it in the bucket towards the graduate program?
I think I would suggest you talk to Tammy about that, but I'm thinking what you could do is you could sign up and take a 500 level class and say, I want to take this for graduate level credit. And you're not taking it to meet your undergraduate level requirements. So the question was, I'm coming in with a mix of units and maybe I don't have to, or I can take more than 12 of these at the upper level before I graduate as an undergrad because my last semester might be a little light. So if that's the situation, I would anticipate that you can probably register for 500 level classes for graduate level credit during your undergraduate degree. But you would still need to take 4 other graduate level classes in the AMP. Well, up to 4. So I think it's doable, but verify that with Tammy. So you do want to be planning ahead if you're interested not only in the AMP, but also your technical electives. And like I said, if you have some extra time or extra units to sort of use because you've already met all of your degree requirements, you might think about putting some into a basket for graduate school. Whether you do that graduate school here or somewhere else, you might sign up to take those for graduate credit if you don't need them for undergraduate credit. And now you've done that, since you've already paid your tuition, it might not cost you much more money to do it now versus later. But it does cost you time. You obviously have to perform and you will have to meet the time requirements on that extra course load. Other questions? I don't want to keep you here, but yes.
Sorry, I missed one of the course numbers. Do you remember what the
Artificial Intelligence 2, is that a quiz? What's the course number? It's 466, 566, but let's double check that. So you were saying in the spring semester, did I get it right? 466, 566, that's the knowledge system engineering. And the AI1 that I'm just labeling that way is 479, 579. Question in the back?
So for people that don't want to really pursue much in the computer realm, you kind of touched on the class. Is there any other class that you count for the ECE degree or both maybe how much engineering or renewable energy or something along the lines besides just photovoltaic class?
So the question was, do we have any other energy type or alternative energy classes? I would suggest that you start looking at non-ECE. You didn't hear that, and it's not being recorded, but we do allow some non-ECE courses. And I know that at one point, I wouldn't have guessed it, but civil engineering was offering a course in battery technology, if that would be of interest. And I'm not sure that it even was offered, but do some exploring on your own. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of that. It sort of depends on how broad you want to cast your net as far as what you consider to be energy. For example, this Internet of Things could be sort of considered that if you're now a smart grid or a smart car, if you're thinking in along those lines, trying to look broadly at that area, that might be one that you might think about, but that's even in the computer area, and now you're really getting me mixed up, but that's in the fall of 18. I thought there was a question to my left. Yes. What was the second level? It's right. Oh no, we're in the fall. So in the spring, it's 462, 562. So 369A is a prerequisite for 462, 562. And the question was, do they continue on? And I just view this as the second semester of 369A is 462. Question? Correct. So the question was, I'm not seeing some of these on UAccess, and the answer is that's right. They're not there. The university has 31 pages. It was over 60 about a week ago that they have to try to push into the system. So we're behind as a university. Most of ours, I think now they're down to 31 pages. 304A is on page 3. I don't remember now. I think 536, that's a grad class, is on page 5, and some of ours are on 11, 12, and 14, if I'm remembering right. So we're in the top third of those being added, so you may have to wait before those actually become available. But the plan is to put the ones that I'm talking about today into the spring of 2018 schedule of classes. So if you don't see them and you go, oh, Barb said it was there, it may not be there, but it's planned to be there.
So all these 4/500 level courses, they're the same course, right? Like it's the same classroom as everyone else?
Yes, so these dual number, the question, if I paraphrase, is what's up with these 4/500 level classes? It's the same class, it's just the 500 has to have a separate component or an additional or an advanced component for the graduate students. But you're getting the same information when you meet in the lecture hall or as the lecture component. So there's some additional workload required of the 500 level students, but you will be in a classroom with undergraduate and graduate level students. So you could be, if you want to call it competing, you can be in the same class with PhD students as a senior in college. And that can sort of make you think, I kind of like this. Maybe I want to go on to graduate school. So it's a good opportunity, actually. We don't have very many undual numbered at the 400 level, as you can see. And that's basically, that allows us to optimize or be more efficient with our supply of faculty. They can now teach essentially undergraduates and graduates. It's the same material or subject area. Question?
For the classes that aren't up on UAccess yet, if our registration period comes around and they're not on, we'll be able to talk to advisors.
Yes, so the plan is if I've told you that this is forthcoming, the question was, how do we deal with this if our time window to register expires? It does open again, I think, after November 13th or something. But get on the wait list with Sydney, and she'll now say, oh, this student wants this particular class, let's say it's 304A, you'll get on that list that she'll be keeping, a shadow bookkeeping, and maybe she can add you when it comes online even before the time window opens up again. I don't know that for sure, but that might be possible. Did that answer your question? Other questions? I apologize for that, but be aware that what I've told you, so now you maybe know more than somebody that didn't show up today. You now have some inside information, and it's true news, hopefully. It's supposed to be valid. It just has to be implemented. Yes? The question was, are there any ECE technical electives offered over the summer? Traditionally, there have not been. We are this forthcoming summer, which is summer of what, 2018. I believe Dr. Melda is going to offer an online class, and it may be dual numbered. I don't remember now whether that's 486, 586, or whether it's 484, 584. But there may be, and now that we're having more online material, we might offer some technical electives in the summer. So just kind of keep your ear to the ground on whether that, but I wouldn't bank on it too much. But we are planning at least to do one right now, and I think it's a 400, 500. I just don't remember the number. I'm sorry for that. Other questions? Yes.
So for the 304 classes, I get it existing on the schedule. Where would I go or who would I contact?
So talk to Dr. Ochoa. He's planning to teach that. And he's teaching 351C, I believe, this semester, and he's teaching 450, 550 this semester. So you could send him an email and ask about 304A. Other questions? If not, I'm not going to hold you here. We are not committed to, oh, well, we almost made it, didn't we? Thank you for your attendance and your interest, and good luck.